just trying to really understand some things. What do we understand the GDP of Russia to be? My estimate, 2 billion. Somebody else in here has something to say?
2 trillion.
2 trillion. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say billion, trillion.
2 trillion is roughly.
2 trillion, roughly, right? We have an estimate for EU GDP.
20.
20. That's what I was thinking, 20, 25 trillion. Maybe, or 15 to 20 trillion. I'd say 25 trillion for the United States, right? Do you see currently in Russia, would you assess economic growth or economic decline?
They're slated to grow at 3.5% last quarter and over 3% this year, much higher than the EU or the United States, and about on par with the United States.
What do you attribute the economic growth to in Russia
as
they're at war, committing more to war resources, and there are sanctions on them? How are they growing?
It's mostly their oil and petrochemical sales, which are higher today than they were before the war.
So, and again, go specifically to where do you put the most profit coming in for them from?
India and China being second to that. They're not numbers
you could put on that to specifically gauge what the numbers are on their economic growth? Because
they exported $120 billion in oil in 2021 in petrochemicals. They exported $180 billion in 2022. So roughly a quarter of that India, roughly a quarter of that China, and then the rest of the world.
Okay. Let's go to some specific war numbers. What do you assess Russia will be spending on the Ukraine war in 2024? Or what do you assess that they spent in 2023?
They are spending 6% of their GDP on defense. They have managed to raise their defense spending. They have not increased their debt. Their debt to GDP is 18%. It has stayed at 18% the last 3 years, while ours has ballooned to 130%.
Why do you assess, if you do, that the EU cannot foot the bill, given the GDP of the EU versus the GDP of Russia, it being substantially more, that the EU can't flip the bill for the war against Ukraine?
In my view, in my assessment, it's a political choice. They've chosen to fund social programs and domestic priorities, climate initiatives, and they have chosen not to spend certain defense numbers. That's Europe as a whole. That's not true for Eastern Europe.
Quickly, in your estimation, you would say that EU could foot the bill for Russian deterrence, deterring this Russian aggression, helping Ukraine fight the war if they had a reappropriation of their resources?
They certainly have the fiscal space. They have the fiscal space, they have the debt space, they have the ability to raise debt in a way that they can do it if they so wish.
That's very important. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe. I will be back on YouTube with more exclusive content, so stay tuned.